Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup College Football Podcast, the sharpest college football podcast. I am your host, Robert Martin, and joining me, as always, to recap Week 2 and then in Part 2 to talk about Week 3, my co-host, BuckMetrics. How are you doing tonight?
I am great. I am apologizing now for an oversight I made last week, and I'll get to that a little bit later here in part one.
Yeah, let's get right
Stay
into
tuned.
it. It was a really good, it was a pretty good week too, actually. Some interesting things happened, and some stuff we called, and some stuff we didn't call, but more stuff that we called rather than stuff that we didn't call per se. So
Until you get to the one loss, yeah, against those spread numbers, then there's a lot that we didn't call.
yeah,
Um, okay, who won the week? I'm going a little broader view here. I'm saying who's won the season so far, and to me, it's pretty clearly the Pac-12. Look at these Power 5 wins at TCU, Florida, at Baylor, at Texas Tech, and so on. 3 losses to the Power 5, which is nice record, 6-3, one of them in overtime on the road at an SEC team. And Oklahoma State was by Arizona State, pretty plucky in a rebuild mode here. First year under Dillingham. Kind of hard to argue that anybody else really would be able to claim to be the top conference so far. Based on this record, they came in really as the premier quarterback conference before the season, and I think they've way outperformed that somehow so far, amazingly. I think they've earned what I call the SEC pass for 2023. They have 8 teams ranked right now. I think we can plausibly argue that if they start to quote beat each other up, you can just say, yeah, it's a top conference. Of course, it's going to happen. I think they have a legitimate claim to that. And also, in typical Pac-12 stupid drama fashion, they obtained a restraining order against their own commissioner. Sadly, about 8 years too late, or else we might still be talking about a Pac-12 in the future. But I think thus far they're the big winners for the weeks, plural.
yeah, I will say that I know you haven't unveiled your official. I know you have conference power rankings, which you do a couple weeks into the season. Not yet, but a couple weeks into the season.
Mm-hmm.
But with mine using some data from the tail end of last year and the early part of this year, I believe I have either the Pac-12 as the number 1 or number 2 conference, functionally tied with the SEC. So now again, that is using some data from last year. So there was some games, notably some of the rivalry games. The SEC won some of those rivalry games, so that's why the
Mm-hmm.
SEC's powered a bit. But yeah, no, like the Pac-12 is definitely one of the top 2 conferences right now, which is again sad because this is it. We are playing the last games of the Pac-12. Now, who knows what's going to happen to the Pac-12? I actually have no idea. Like it literally could just straight up dissolve if Washington State and Oregon State do well enough. Maybe they could get to the Big 12. I mean, like if one of them made the college football playoff, is the Big 12 really going to say no? Right? Like
Yeah,
they'd be
that would
like,
be
you went to the
interesting.
college football play. Like this is the thing. If one of them went to the college football playoff, if one like, it's a good question as to what exactly the Big 12 would do. Are they going to just add a bunch? Are they going to reverse merger with the Mountain West? Are they going to go to the Mountain West? Are they going to there's a lot of question marks about Oregon State and Washington State, but right now they're proving everybody on the field wrong. And you know what? Honestly, right at this point, they're like the best feel-good story of 2023 so far, next to Colorado, which is ironically also in the Pac-12, but that's beside the point. The point is that
Mm-hmm.
they were left for dead, and they have. I mean, the thing is, it's really hard, right? I mean, we talk about. And there's that famous example last year of like Kirby Smart convincing people that Georgia was going to go 5-7 or some insane thing like that, and like they use that as motivation. Now I don't know exactly how accurate that is, but like you're looking at these schools, right? And basically what happened with what happened this summer, you are now looking at functionally the entire college football world said we don't want you, right? It's literally like we do not want you in our conferences. We don't care that your conference is dissolving. We don't want you. You're not a big enough school. You are not a good enough school. We don't want you. And the thing is, it would be very fair for a lot of these kids, especially ones who have transferred in, and even for for coaches, for other people in the programs. Like, it's a big question mark depending on where they land. Are they even going to be able to afford coaches' salaries for a lot of these coaches? Are coaches going to be able to let go? Staff cuts are going to happen if they if
Yeah.
they if they have to fall into the Mountain West or the AAC, right? So, and again, a lot of the kid once you fall to a Power Five, like to a G5 conference, are those kids really going to stick around? They're probably going to transfer to somewhere else, right? So it would be very, very easy for all that stuff to people start panicking and being like, "I'm getting out of here. I'm going to go somewhere else." I'm like, but that's not happening. They're just like, "Nope, we're going to go prove the entire college football world that they're wrong to ignore us." And so far, it's working really well. I mean, obviously, with USC and Oregon and other ones, we knew they were going to be some of the top schools, right? But the most impressive thing is the bottom. Colorado just massively outperforming what people thought they were going to. So far, at least, I think that's going to come to an end relatively soon, but probably not this week, though. But just the huge performances by Oregon State and Washington State. And again, Oregon State using a quarterback that we kind of left for dead, right? DJ Ulica, from Clemson, right? We thought he was the
Yep.
problem at Clemson. It turns out he was not the problem at Clemson. Clemson was the problem at Clemson. He was actually the solution potentially. They
Yes.
just really like he is in the two games, and this was insane, right? Because they had the spread this week for them against an FCS team was like 28.5. Now I didn't bet it, but I'm like that's really really low for a team that destroyed San
Seems
Jose
like, yeah.
State. Yeah, and they just absolutely destroyed that FCS team. Like, oh, okay, this team is like legit for real. And it's like DJ looks basically the same he looked as in that one game that everybody keeps talking about from Notre
In
Dame.
that Notre Dame
He looks
game.
exactly like that DJ from
Yeah.
that game. And I was like, oh well, people keep holding on to that game, being like he could be that again, but I'm like that's not gonna. But like, sure enough, he's looking like that so far. So yeah, like shout out to these teams, and they're just playing with so much heart right now, and it's really nice to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree. Well, let me see. As a Pac-12 guy for about 6 more months, agree. Um,
Yeah.
I guess in thrifty, flinty Canadian fashion, did not have a winner this week. I guess you're just giving out the compliments like manhole covers, as they say.
Well, I guess we have to grudgingly give the win to Texas. I guess that was probably the biggest
Don't
win of
do
the
it.
week. To
Don't
be
do it.
fair, I know. Well, there
No.
is some. Don't worry, it's okay. There will be a
Yeah.
hearty dose of realism for Texas too. Don't worry. The thing is, and well, we'll talk about. Fine. Here's what we'll give the win to Texas. They won the week. You get your 1 week win. Congratulations. This may or may not save Sark's job when you eventually lose 4 more games, including one to Iowa State. So maybe there you go. There's your win for now. But yeah, you win the week. Congratulations. Whatever that matters at the end of the season. Come down, collect your prize. But there's a lot tougher teams coming up, even in the next month. So yeah, good luck.
Yeah. I couldn't. I couldn't. So you're a bigger man than I am. All right. Here's an easier question. Who lost the week? Um, I'll go first, and just kind of the counterpoint. This is more like who's lost the weeks, plural. Look at this resume for the SEC. 2 Power 5 wins, at Cal by 4, and over mighty Virginia. Those Power 5 losses are okay, understandable, but this looks like the resume of basically kind of a peak. He said sarcastically, Clay Helton Pac-12. Just nothing really there. This is not good at all. It's embarrassing, to be honest. If we really quickly just to illustrate the point a little bit, I think we both say that the top 2 quarterbacks in the SEC are probably in either order, Jaden Daniels and KJ Jefferson.
Maybe
Maybe we say third would be, just to make this easier, Spencer Rattler, or whom else? Maybe Devin Leary, one of
Joe
those two.
Joe
Or
Milton. I don't
yeah, he
see. The thing
didn't.
is,
I
he didn't do
he had
good.
a
Devin Leary also
crummy
did.
week.
Yeah, Tennessee had a
He
bad
was
week.
horrible last week.
Devin
Yeah.
Leary and Kentucky, I think, played. I think Ball State. They struggled to put them away for a while there. Like I,
Hmm.
uh,
I
it's
Rattler's had some good numbers in some horrible games.
yeah.
So let's just, for the sake of this argument here, say it's okay. Spencer Rattler's the third best. if we're going to do a quarterback draft just between the Pac-12 and the SEC, how how many Pac-12 quarterbacks get drafted before the third guy, Spencer Rattler, or
Well,
Spencer Rattler's proxy go?
let let's go through it,
I
right? So
think
okay,
I
USC,
put
yes.
yeah
Yeah, USC, yes.
yes,
I think two. It's debatable as to who you'd rank on top of each other versus Bo Nix versus Michael Penix Jr. I think you rank Bo Nix
but
slightly ahead of Michael
but
Penix, but both of them ahead of
but
any
both of
SEC
them go
team.
ahead number three for
Yeah,
sure. So that's three. Yep.
I'd
So
say
you've got Nick
probably should.
Penix,
I'd take.
Caleb.
I'd take. Yeah, I'd take Shadur
I put
Sanders
Shador
over.
Sanders. Yep.
Yeah,
I don't think that's much of a
prob.
problem.
I mean, if
I would take Cam
I
Ward at this point.
yeah, I take Cam Ward too. Probably DJ, but I'd want to see a couple more weeks of DJ being not bad, but then I'd take him over anybody in the Pac-12,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or in the SEC. And
Okay,
like,
we'll put him over in the side for now. What about
UCLA's
Jaden Delora?
quarterbacks. Yeah, I take him too.
Yeah, yeah, he had a rough time Saturday, but all right. So you got DJU and Dante Moore over here.
I take
I'm not
Dante
going to
Moore.
count.
I want to see a bit more Dante Moore too, but I'd consider it. Yeah,
It's close. Cam Rising, I think, if he's healthy, definitely would go ahead at
probably.
Utah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're left
Have we
with
missed
like
any
basically just
Pac-12
like
teams?
Cal Stanford and ASU. That's so you're going down
Yeah,
to
those are.
like you've got this top seven, and then it's close between. I think, and this kind of makes sense. DJU, Rattler, and Dante Moore. I mean, Moore is so inexperienced, but God, he's looked good, and I've got him in part two. I've got him in my
Yeah,
metrics.
but like
That's
you've
pretty
got.
rough. You've got seven guys going ahead of your third best in a bigger conference too.
Yeah, that's the. I mean, the SEC it means more, right? Apparently, not to quarterbacks, not for quarterbacks, I guess. At least not this year.
Yeah, it means more running the ball this year.
Yeah,
And not to steal your who lost the week, but everybody agrees Georgia is an elite, excellent team. Can you name one very good team from the SEC? I honestly, in good faith, cannot.
no, I mean, even the thing is, people are going to say, "Oh, it's Georgia," and like, yeah, but like, Georgia
They're
has not.
above. They're above.
They're yeah.
Well, I'm putting them above very good. I'm just
I
saying
think
after Georgia.
I think they played.
We
They
set them
played
aside.
another. Yeah, Georgia. No, but even then, Georgia played a MAC team, and they've somewhat struggled. Like they have not put these teams away. Like they've struggled a little bit too. The Carson Beck era is looking like just a worse Stetson Bennett era, which was not great to begin with. So this is the thing, and the defense has lost most of them play for the Eagles now. So again, the defense has lost pieces too. So like Georgia is not this powerhouse. Like but if you put Georgia off to the side, a very good SEC team, there isn't one. It's just
A very
Georgia,
good
and
team.
the other teams are
They're yeah, are like
it's Georgia,
at
and then
best
there's just a
good.
bunch of like it's good,
You
I guess.
you
They're
you fall right down to this grouping of like a Bama, Ole Miss, LSU.
yeah, it's hard to
What
differentiate them. It's really hard to
Tennessee post
differentiate them.
Hooker. Yeah,
Yeah,
This is just, and we kind of saw it coming when we did that ranking the quarterback rooms. Just said, well, you know, if the quarterback play looks like it is kind of forecasted before the season, this is it's a down year for the SEC, and I haven't seen any quarterback in the SEC that really amazes me. I mean, you just kind of have to go off
no,
their past performances and say, okay, KJ Jefferson is good, Jaden Daniels has been good, Carson Beck might be good. Spencer Rattler had moments, but it's a lot of there's a lot of conjecture and hope and
yeah,
forecasting rather than real just solid data point actuals. So I have them as losing the week. You got a little more specific here.
yeah. I went very. I mean, you said the entire SEC. I went a little deeper and just said Alabama in the SEC. I mean, look at this. So this is some notable games from 2022 to 2023, and again, all those 2022 games as an note below, those were with 3 first-round draft picks. Number 1, obviously, Bryce Young. Number 3, Will Anderson, and then number 12, somehow Jahmyr Gibbs, and then also an assortment of other number 1 and other later picks. Like I think Brian Branch was in there. There's a lot of other picks involving those 2022 games as well. So last year at Texas, they were 21-point spreads, and these are the spreads as going by As Phil Steele, I think some of the spreads were different on the day of a sports book, but whatever, that doesn't matter. They're roughly equivalent. I think Texas the day of was 20, but whatever, who cares? 21-point spread. They only beat Texas by 1 point last year in the game. In that game, Texas A&M, they are 24-point favorites. That was when Texas A&M's starting quarterback went down. We said that may not be that bad. That may not be that bad. They only beat them by 4 in that game. At Tennessee, 9-point favorites somehow. No idea why they were. They lost that game by 3 points. At LSU, they were 13-point favorites. They lost that game by 1 in OT to a 2-point conversion. At Ole Miss, 11-point favorites, and they only won that one by 6. And then obviously this year at Texas, 7-point favorites, and they lost that one by 10. So the thing is, again, there's a huge pattern here. So when you're being like, oh, you're just picking like 6 random games and they didn't cover the spreads, like, well, no, I'm not nitpicking. I'm like, oh, they missed it by 3 here. And a lot of these, they missed these by 10, 20 points in some cases by miscovering. They didn't cover the spread by multiple scores. Again, these are also the best schools they played in the last 2 years. It's not like they played a ton of other. They didn't even play Georgia last year. Like, these are the best schools they faced. They
Yeah.
had massive spreads against them. Didn't come close to covering any of these spreads, and I actually lost. They went 3-3 in games against big name programs. It's questionable how much talent is left. I mean, their rushing attack has definitely decreased since they lost Jahmyr Gibbs. He was actually really good in his NFL debut there against the Chiefs. Jalen Milroe is not Bryce Young. He's not Mac Jones. He is significantly worse than those. And again, the rest of the people you have on the bench is Tyler Buckner. So that whatever that is, that's not particularly great. The defense has lost a lot of pieces just in the NFL draft last year. They lost a starting caliber defensive lineman, a safety. I think they lost a cornerback somewhere in there as well. It's really, and again, the wide receivers have not been able to produce yet. Okay, they've been highly recruited, but they haven't done anything. And I think you're starting to see, and I'm going to draw a line here between Clemson and Alabama. They have not hit the transfer portal as well. They have been mostly focusing on getting the best recruits out of high school, which is fine. That is a viable strategy. But in today's world, guess what? If you get a lemon out of high school, you can trade that lemon in and get a much better player now, right? Like how we've seen so many times, time and time again, where this guy comes in as a 5-star and he's absolutely horrible at the college level. He can't do it. He's too inaccurate. Whatever. He can't handle college. I mean, we even see it from the pros, right? Oh, here's this amazing player in college, goes to the NFL, gets crushed. Duds in recruiting happen all the time, and the transfer portal is a new. See, the thing is, the best programs before, they were at a point where they were recruiting so many highly skilled players that you have one as a dud, doesn't matter. You have like 5 more coming. You're getting a 5-star quarterback every year, so it doesn't matter. You can always have a quarterback in the back. You always have a backup quarterback. You always have a couple of star defensive linemen. That's how you built programs before. But now it doesn't matter. Now everybody at the end of every season is functionally a free agent, basically. So now instead of having to develop a 5-star a defensive lineman, you can now just go grab one. Be like, I like that kid. Bring him here, right? You're Alabama, you're Clemson. You should be able to do this. But other schools have been crushing them in the transfer portal, and we're starting to see the result of it. This is the last 2 years where they've lost significant talent. And the thing is, I'm not sure if I see any first-round draft pick. I think maybe one first-round draft pick from this Bama team right now. But, like, again, that's it. That's a very low number, and that draft pick's on defense. So I don't see. I'm really having a hard time seeing how this gets better. And this is the funny thing, right? Because last week we're probably almost famous for this, saying Texas is bad. Don't bet on Texas. And the thing is, I still feel that's correct. I am not like. This result here did not be. I'm not like, okay, Texas is going to win the national championship now. That has not happened. But on the flip side, though, we were also before the season we were like, hey guys, Bama could actually be kind of bad this year, but don't worry, they're going to beat Texas. Okay, so guess what? They didn't crush Texas. Texas beat a Bama team that we all think is kind of bad, and now we're supposed to be like, Texas is amazing now. Texas plays Kansas in 2 weeks, and then Oklahoma the week after that. If they get through that undefeated, okay, I'll talk it up. But again, in the last 2 games, Texas has not had a 100-yard rusher. The last 2 games, their highest rusher only had 58 yards. They can't run the ball anymore. And that was their secret weapon, Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson last year, to open up passing lanes. And Quinn Ewers is having to do everything. Now, he was able to do it against Bama. Great. Good for him. But can he consistently do it an entire season? Can he be the dominant force of this offense for an entire season? If he can, great. Yeah, Texas could be the best. But I think Texas is going to get burned by not being able to run the ball as efficiently, and there's going to be eventually a team that can outscore them, and it could even be Kansas not this week, but next week.
Agree. I know this is your loser, but I've just got a lot of. I'm going to try not to recycle too much from the preseason SEC preview, but coupling that with what I saw on Saturday before the game, honest to God, Saban sounded like Mitch McConnell. He was just he just sounded like he's just kind of weak, man. He did not sound fully robust. At halftime, I'm going to go back. So I've mentioned I co-host a podcast on USC basketball, and the host of that actually has been around USC for a long time. He worked in the athletic department for a while. And long ago, he made a good point. He said, when you have a coach that's not in season one and he's blaming his team's execution, that's a problem. That's basically a coach that's not coaching, that's blaming the players. And honest to God, that's what he said at halftime. The halftime reporter spoke to Coach Saban. He said the team's execution is not there. I heard that, and my ears perked way up because I've never heard that before. That's really, really telling. This supposed return to a physical run-oriented offense is framing. It wasn't by choice. It's because their quarterback room sucks. Their offensive line is not that good. They had 2 illegal snap penalties at home. I don't know how you do that. You can see basically most teams go an entire season without 2 illegal snap penalties, home or road. The national rank of their last 5 recruiting classes are first, second, and first. And yet, both of the offense and defense regressed last season, and they're well on track to regress again this season. You remember last season, we said several times, and we were not the only ones, everybody was saying, oh my gosh, Bryce Young has no help there. You've got these basically an average of, recruiting class ranking 1.4 nationally is turned into the no help crew. This was the biggest home loss under Saban. In basically, I think in Saban's entire history of coaching, not just at Alabama. You did a nice effort of picking out just their horrible efforts over the last 6 games. If I was a little more generous and went back one more season and I just said, here are the crappy efforts, 9 out of those 29 have sucked. They've just been not up to par. He's not coaching the way he used to coach. He's not coaching his coaches hard anymore, I don't think. Or if he does, he's clearly not being effective. In their last 7 games versus Power 5 teams, they are 4-3. That the next phase is underway, and it's what do they say, like the Revolution would broadcast. We're there. This is being broadcast, but nobody's acknowledging it. It is there. It's not like on its way. It's there, kids. And lastly, I'll just kind of, as I like to do, wrap this up with a question. If you just anonymized the teams in basic uniforms last week and didn't know who the coaches were, I would think that just Bama was an average team. I would say, yeah, that looks like maybe it's Kentucky or maybe South Carolina with a better defense. That's kind of what it looked like. That bore no resemblance to any kind of Alabama team. You kind of agree with that characterization?
Yeah, it's again, and this is the thing, and we, as our job as kind of seasoned bettors, is to try to pick apart and different, because like there's that helmet and that sticker where you're like, oh, it's Bama, right? And again, we get a lot of value. We find a lot of value in a lot of lines because of that. If it's the not betting on the Dallas Cowboys of the world.
Yeah.
It's not betting on the overvalued public teams. But with Bama, it is so ingrained where it's like, it's Bama. They'll take care of it, right? They'll get the job done because they have for a decade, right? They've been one of the best teams for a decade. You just get to they'll do it, but they're just not doing it anymore. And this is the thing, right? Oh, we're going to go to a run first. Well, you have to because you have no quarterback and receivers.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this the other interesting thing is you talk about the recruiting rankings. And the thing is, I'm almost wondering if some of these schools have started to figure out the analytics part of this and have figured out which are starting to figure out or maybe getting better hit rates as to which ones are the duds, which ones aren't the duds. And Bama might just be getting the ones that they realize are the duds. And they're like, okay, this doesn't actually translate well to a higher level. We're going to pass on this kid, but Bama's like, okay, we'll take you, right? Because the thing is, there's not really many other explanations. Like, if Bama is really this dominant recruiting force, how, like, they have all these 5 stars and stuff, how are they not, like, they should be crushing everybody. They should be 10, 15 point favorites in every single game, and they should
Yeah.
be destroying, but they're not. And the only thing I could think of is that they have not fully adapted to a newer era of analytics or something, because they should have 2, 3 first round draft picks coming out of there every year, and they just don't. It's either the coaching, or they're not getting the right players, or something, but it's something is not clicking there.
Yeah. Maybe it's a lack of resources, he said sarcastically. Okay.
Yes.
Victory laps. I'm going to do a few here. Cam Ward, I reversed myself really quickly last season, and he made me look good with his very nice performance in the win over Wisconsin. Jeff Sims, I didn't want to crap on the guy, but man alive, we were all over that before the season, and he's just, I don't know. It's not him. It's just he shouldn't belong there. It's at the point where you can't even blame him. It's a Matt Rule thing. But boy, what a horrible decision. Um, as I again before I said before the season I said more Brady Hoke means the more San Diego State stinks, and we're just seeing that they weren't even competitive with UCLA, and a guy making his first career college start. And they're replacing a lot on offense, including like their best running back in a long time. Good job, Brady Hope. Keep it up. Just the ATM. I'm going to do a little bit of a victory lap here. I, before the season, said I need to see if the Wisconsin defense is going to work with Phil Longo as the offensive coordinator. I did passed along all kinds of numbers about Phil Longo's a great OC, but he kills your defense. And they gave up in the mid 30s to Washington State. Now, maybe that'll turn out to be a really good effort, but it's not promising considering what we've seen historically out of that Wisconsin defense, including last season, and what we historically see out of Luke Fickell defenses. Boise, 17 and a half points per game. I said coming into the season I was concerned about it, and they've had 2 crappy efforts coming into the season. Shout out to the Boise State fan who, before the game, I said, your offense is in trouble. He said, no, it's not. It's fine. After the game, I said, you believe me now, or do you really enjoy scoring 16 points at home? And he said, I hope you lost money. They covered. So that's a good sign. If you're a Boise fan, you're down 2 already in week 2. Well, we covered at least. And I just crushed these teams in our previews, Nevada and Arkansas State. I said they feel like bottom 5 teams. And my gosh, Arkansas State, I think they've been outscored like 100-3 so far this season. And Nevada just got crushed by an FCS team.
Yeah, and then Nevada also the week before getting absolutely destroyed by USC as well. Couple things on that with Cam Ward, and you kind of mentioned it as well. This is kind of a combined point with the Cam Ward and the Wisconsin defense thing. Right now, we think Washington State and Cam Ward could actually be very good. Now, let's go back. Who did they beat week 1? Colorado State. Who's Colorado State playing this week? Colorado. So,
yeah.
Okay, they crushed this Colorado State team. People are like, oh, Colorado's just bad. Well, maybe not. Maybe Washington State's actually really good, right? And I mean, I'm looking at this here, and everybody and their brother is betting on Colorado.
Yeah.
And
It's
again,
like
for good
90%
reason.
of the money.
Yes. Now, the interesting thing was, and again, talking about Jeff Sims here too, we're going to work him into this as well. With Colorado, they were like not doing amazingly in that first half. Nebraska was kind of dominating that game, with the exception
Yeah.
of Jeff Sims just deciding to. Apparently, he had some on Colorado -3 there, just kind of giving them the game away. Now, in the second half, they kind of blew it open. I think Nebraska just said, "Screw this, we're done," and they just kind of that was when the blowout happened. But even then, I think it was 13-3 at the half, and then the half line, the second half line for the books was Nebraska -0.5. So
Wow.
they actually expected Nebraska to get back into the game. Now that didn't happen. for some unknown reason, I think Colorado just gave up. But Shedeur Sanders, 99% of the money, over 2.5 passing touchdowns. He didn't get 3; he only got 2. He went under his passing total as well. So like Nebraska's defense was not bad. It was just their horrific offense. And this is the thing, right? Colorado State is 23-point dogs this week against Colorado. They got destroyed by a Washington State team that might actually be pretty good. I'm not taking this now. I think you wait for this. This is going to be 25.
Yeah.
I think you wait because this game's at 10 o'clock Eastern. You
Mm-hmm.
wait until supper time before you go for
Yeah.
supper. Put something a little bit on the Colorado State spread, and walk away and come back in a couple hours, and then maybe you've made some money. Just because this is going to be a bubble that's going to pop at some point. I think the books have realized, hey, maybe Colorado State's actually pretty good. My model actually has them as a relatively good team. My model is still weird on Colorado because it has last year's data, so it thinks, oh, that
Yeah.
horrible Colorado team. But it's getting there. Like it's every week they're becoming in the model, they're becoming better and better. It's like it was before when I ran the model last week. I think Nebraska was like 24-point favorites. Now they're only a touchdown favorite. So like it's getting there. The gap is
Yep.
shrinking. It's once last year's data is gone, it'll be fine. Boise again. That was a very sad loss there. We were on the UCF cover and they didn't cover, but they did massively outgain Boise State. So, okay, yeah, we lost that cover bet, but we were definitely on the right side there. And yeah, it's this Nebraska team, and I mean, I actually kind of feel bad for Matt Rule because I had questioned how much he'd be able to turn this team around, and honestly, I think he has turned it around a lot. A lot of the characteristic Nebraska problems, they seem to have gone. He actually seems to be doing pretty well here. The problem is just Jeff Sims, which is what we said. We
Yeah.
said that was very questionable. Why did you get Jeff Sims? We listed at least 4 other people that went to other schools that he could have gotten instead. Dylan Hopkins, Casey Thompson. Actually, I think no. Casey Thompson was at Nebraska last year, right? They
He
could have
was in
kept Casey
Nebraska.
Thompson.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there was a lot of other teams, quarterbacks who could have gotten instead of Jeff Sims, but they decided on, for whatever reason, maybe they couldn't get anybody better than Jeff Sims. Maybe everybody was spoken for. I don't know, but for some reason they wanted Jeff Sims. But the problem now is, okay, apparently he's also injured, so he may not be starting. But he's the entire offense. He's all of your passing yards, and he was the most leading rusher last game, and he was the second leading rusher in this game, even when they got blown out. So there is a lot of questions about what this Nebraska team can even be without Jeff Sims, and I think he can't start this week. So yeah, I'm interested to see if there's a new quarterback who can actually turn this around or not.
I don't think so. I think basically the problem can be summed up when you say, the offense revolves around Jeff Sims. I don't know how you put yourself in that spot unless you've just got some incredible belief and you've never watched a film of him in his life and you've never checked a box score.
Yeah.
Okay. What we missed. I missed on this. This kid, Anthony Colandrea, I think is how you say his name. He's a 5'11" true freshman at University of Virginia. He enrolled just in January, so at least he got spring practice under his belt. He came in for the injured QB named Musket against at the end versus Tennessee. He didn't really do much. And then his first career start against JMU, a very good JMU defense, I think. Look at these numbers. This is unreal for your debut against a real big boy defense that's going to be probably top 20 nationally. I did not see this coming at all. I really like JMU. I think you did too last week. Didn't know that basically this guy was just lurking in the shadows, ready to pickpocket us and tear up our tickets on JMU. Apparently, Tony Elliott, Virginia coach, also missed on him too because he's not even sure if this guy's going to start on Saturday. He's saying, well, Musket might come back. What else do you need to see? 6 incompletions against JMU for what is that, like 12 yards, 13 yards an attempt? My gosh. Tony Elliott, you found something. You stumbled into something for once here. Don't screw it up. So if the coach doesn't even know, I'm not beating myself over it, but man, this came out of just nowhere.
Yeah. So that game is actually Friday night. Actually, it's Friday, not Saturday. But either way,
Okay.
No, that's kind of insane that he'd be like, well, our starter, he could be like, you have someone who throws for 377 yards against one of the better defenses in college football, and you're like, well, our main starter, like, what are you doing? This guy,
Yeah.
like, JMU, and to be fair, again on the cover thing, I am not shedding tears over that cover, because they were dominant for like most of the first half. Then suddenly JMU came back, and then the second half took a massive lead. Then James Madison came back, but like man, that the early parts of that game, I think it was like 21-7.
Yeah.
I think it was like 21-7 for a while there. Like JMU looked completely dominant, and also JMU completely stopped them from running the ball. Like literally, they
Yeah.
ran for I think like 1 yard a carry. Like JMU's defense is really good. It's just that this guy, we didn't see this guy coming, and I think
Mm-mm.
that's the problem. So I think it's interesting, right? Because they're 14.5 point dogs against Maryland, but Maryland did not really put away Charlotte either. Maryland
Mm-mm.
struggled against Charlotte. They didn't cover the spread against Charlotte. I think Virginia could be a better team. We'll see. Let's see what happens on Friday night. I'm going to debate putting something on them for Friday night. Well, there's literally nothing else to bet on Friday night, anyways. I don't really have any.
Yeah.
I'm not really a fan of Army, Texas,
Oh,
UTSA, or Utah State Air Force. So
I've got one. There you go. Yeah, speak for yourself on that. Believe me.
okay.
Okay. Oh man. Okay. I'm just gonna apologize in advance. We didn't mention this in the preview of the week, so that's all the setup that we need. Once you see the picture here, folks.
Yeah.
All right. Begin scene. So, two head coaches with contracts that will pay them a combined 175 million over 20 years both came into this game 3-8 in their last 11 versus Power 5 programs. This promised to be a matchup of horrible coaching, the likes of which we rarely see. And our heroes here did not disappoint. In just 16 seconds of game time, we got A&M facing a fourth and about a foot on the Miami 6-yard line. They are completely confused. They don't know what they're going to run, so they call a timeout with a play clock under 5 seconds, of course. In their timeout, they discuss which play they're going to run. Coming out of the timeout, Miami runs 12 defenders onto the field, and they have to call a timeout. This gives A&M another chance to figure out and just make sure of the play they're going to run. The teams take the field again and coming out of 2 timeouts to figure out exactly what they're going to do. A&M is called for a false start penalty. 5 yards back, they kick a field goal. After
Oh,
a field goal, A&M kicks off and they give up a touchdown on the subsequent kickoff. And then, of course, Miami being Miami and a Mario team, after the brilliant touchdown, is late getting their 11th man on the field for the extra point. End scene. It's just, you know what the kids call that? Do you know what the kids call that? I think the kids call that a chef's
chef's
kiss.
kiss. Chef's kiss.
Yes.
Yes.
I also want to just point out that, I mentioned before the season that the A&M defense was pretty much average. They give up 8 yards per play on Saturday to Miami. I'm just going to say this. One of the best, most promising coaches around is at Duke. And before he was at Duke, he was a defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. Just remember that and think of that for what it might be worth.
Hmm. Agree. Yeah. No. It's such a weird thing because honestly, Miami and Texas A&M, it's two schools and kind of one. The only difference, one being in the SEC, one being the ACC, but they're very similar in many ways. They're both massively overpaid a coach for too long. They can't really get rid of them, and they both are like former dynasties that are trying to regain that glory. And Miami just crushed them, which is kind of funny because I kind of hate
Yeah.
Texas A&M and I can tolerate Miami, so that's kind of funny. But yeah, that was just a really insanely high scoring game, and yeah, the model actually did have Miami in that game. I didn't actually pull the trigger on it because I was just like, I saw it at 4.5, and they kept slipping, and I was just like iffy of that. But apparently, it was the right call, so I was happy they won.
Well, in fairness, it's easy to bet against one of those coaches, but it's really, really hard to bet on either of them too.
True.
So,
Yeah.
nobody can fault you for passing on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. You?
Yeah.
What is this?
Yes. So we're gonna give we sometimes do give reverse Narduzzi. So I actually do have a Narduzzi, but I'm gonna give my reverse one first. To Notre Dame, they've looked really good in 2 games. Like I mean, or sorry, 3 games. They played against a FCS team in one of the games, so it doesn't really count. But
Yeah.
they crushed Navy, good. And then last week they just got the job done against NC State. Like the thing was they were 7.5 point favorites. I think the books needed NC State to win, so that means generally like look out if you're betting on Notre Dame. And they just that game was not particularly close. Every time NC State tried to make it close, Notre Dame went out there and
Mhm.
scored again. And again, even then, the game was interrupted by lightning. The game was closer at the beginning, but then they just pulled away even after a lightning break. Like, just this team is really good, and they're playing. Oh no, they're playing Central Michigan this week, but then they play Ohio State the week
There.
after that. They could beat Ohio State. Like like I always was like, oh no, they're gonna play Ohio State and get crushed. But like from what I'm seeing from Ohio State, who failed to cover a 42-point spread against Youngstown State by only scoring 35 points, um, I think they could beat. Yeah, I think they could beat Notre Dame. I think they could beat Ohio State. I think this team could be legit. And another point I'll make onto this too is that when you go back to the Brian Kelly era for Notre Dame, the era was always punctuated by wins. They always win games, but they generally win games close and it's sometimes ugly. They're not doing that anymore. Like that NC State game would have normally been a 7 point Notre Dame game, a 7 point Notre Dame win, or a last second field goal to win that game. That's not the case anymore. They are dominating these games. And now, okay, we're a little low on NC State this year, so that's fine. But like this team is winning games and dominating those games, which is generally not what Notre Dame does. So this is a very early sign that like, hey, and this could again Notre Dame being good just completely screws up the college football playoff. So um, this is just again, it's the last year of the 14 playoffs. So of course Notre Dame is going to do something insane and screw everything up. So like, could you just imagine like an undefeated Notre Dame, like a one-loss Pac-12 champion who lost to like there could just be some insane thing that happens this year. So like, but an undefeated Notre Dame would just make everything even more chaotic. So yeah, let's see. Here's the thing: if it's an undefeated Notre Dame, of course they're going into the college football playoff, right? They'd have a win
Mhm.
against Ohio State, Clemson. They're playing Duke. They're playing Louisville somehow too. Apparently, they're just playing all the good ACC teams somehow, and USC too. Like,
Mhm.
if they're undefeated or even one loss, they're going to the college football playoff. So
Yeah, one loss makes it interesting. Undefeated, no doubt. One loss, you can get into some serious conjecture.
depends who the loss is.
Well, I'll put it this way: I can't expect that. Now it's week 2, going into week 3. I'd be hard pressed to really entertain any kind of argument about a 2-loss SEC team beating these guys out for a bit, where usually
No, 100%. Mm-hmm.
it'd be a much more of a discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
They've I don't want to say they looked infallible, but my gosh, they haven't done anything wrong so far.
And people like everybody talking about Texas this week. They're flying a bit under the radar. So keep an eye out for them.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good
So
point. Yeah.
so this is my second Narduzzi award for, or my first Narduzzi award for this week. So kind of inspired by your last week's rant about Comcast. So this week was the first week of the NFL season. So this is a little bit different from college football, but I think you guys will be fine with this. So everybody knows what Red Zone is. Obviously, it's the channel that goes back and forth between all the games on Sunday. Something I really wish they could do for college football, but apparently is impossible to do. So what happens is Bell, which my family and I, we subscribe to Bell for phone and TV, and basically most of our stuff is through Bell, which is one of the 3 main telecoms in Canada. They own 70% of TSN, which is our ESPN, which is also the same logo as ESPN, because ESPN owns the other 30% of TSN. So what happens is from 2020 to 2022, if you subscribe to TSN through Bell, which you actually were a subscriber just by having one of their next step up packages. So they have a pick your own, like a basic slim down pick your own, where you can basically pick to subscribe to TSN and other sports networks for a fee per month. That's what we do. But if you go to one of their tiered packages, you get it automatically for free. So most people are subscribers to TSN. You would get a free complimentary. You could basically sign into the TSN app on your phone, and you could watch Red Zone for free. Great. That's great because guess what? Bell also owns TSN, so it's actually complementary to each other.
Mm-hmm.
However, apparently, and I didn't actually catch this, this this has recently changed. So TSN has now offered an option for cord cutters where if you cut the cord and you no longer subscribe to TSN through a TV service provider like Bell or Rogers, you can pay them $19 a month, 19.99 a month, so $20 a month, and then you get TSN, all the TSN channels, and you just have that on your phone. So instead of having to bundle it with something. Now, what happens is they've now also created something called TSN Plus. Now, apparently, as I've highlighted here, TSN is Plus is $8 a month or $80 annually, and for that it's free included for people who subscribe to TSN online. So cord cutters get it for free, but if you subscribe to TSN through your television provider, which we do through Bell, which also owns TSN, we have to pay an additional $8 a month because now Red Zone is exclusive to TSN
No.
Plus.
Mm-hmm.
So I was I basically on Sunday afternoon I took out my phone and was gonna call up Red Zone, and I click on the Red Zone button, only to find out that I need to subscribe to TSN Plus because which is different from the last year when I was able to do it for free. So I was like, all right, time to go commit some crimes. um, but no, now obviously people could just go online and do an illegal streaming site. I actually did buy it for $8 a month because I'm like it's just going to be for 4 months anyway, so it's not a big deal. I'll just cancel once the NFL season's done. But this is really annoying and dumb that their Bell, which owns TSN, is trying to incentivize people to not subscribe to Bell anymore. That doesn't make any sense because you're basically saying
Yeah.
if you subscribe to TSN through us, you have to pay us more money. But if you subscribe to TSN without us, then you have to pay less money. So I don't understand what they're doing. This makes no sense, and this is just really
Yeah.
annoying. And it's shooting themselves in the foot. This doesn't even make sense. So yeah, that's really dumb of you, Bell. But Bell does also other insane things too. But this is what happens when you have monopolies over things. So yeah,
Or not monopolies. I mean, we have a freer system here, and we still screw it up. So I think
yeah,
just basically, if you run a company this size, you're either just an a-hole or just inept.
yeah,
I don't know. I think that's A or B on that one. My heart
yeah.
goes out to you. That stinks. Sorry
That's
about
it's
that.
just because like we got that for free for years and it was great. It was nice, and then all of a sudden you have to like pay $8 a month for something you got before for free. It's dumb, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep. All right. Note for future reference. I split this up into two parts. Just this first slide here is just following up on what I'd kind of thrown out there last week and little follow up. Sam Houston, I'd mentioned I liked their defense, so they followed up that nice showing against BYU by holding Air Force to 13 points. On the other side, their team Apex is a minus 22, which is amazingly bad. I think that they are quickly becoming, if not already established as, the Iowa of Conference USA. My eyes on these guys as an underplay. I'm not going. I might break my rules and try to play an under week 4 until my model comes out, but I'd be surprised if they're not a really solid underplay once I get my model out in week 5.
So actually, so
Jordan
I just want
McLeod. Oh, go ahead.
I
Yes.
want I want to jump in on that. Something a little bit of a fun thing here. So because Sam Houston is a new FBS team, and because with the way the model works, it worked with conference adjustments. I've changed it a little bit so it doesn't work this way. But last week when I was doing the projections for Sam Houston State, they actually broke the model. So because it was difference from yards in conference play versus yards for the conference itself, basically because Sam
Mm-hmm.
Houston had no conference games, they had not played anybody in their conference, that was penciled in as 0. So then because it was difference from conference, it was negative. So they had negative offensive passing and rushing yards, and then but negative defensive. So the thing is, the best part is though you want negative ones because you want negative on defense
Yeah.
because it actually makes your defense better, but then you want positive. So they had literally the worst offense ever in the history of college football, but they also had the best defense ever in the history of college football in simultaneously, which like they might actually have that defense. They
Yeah.
might actually,
Yeah. It's not too far. Your model might actually be working for the wrong reason there.
yeah,
Jordan McLeod for James Madison. I was all happy that he surfaced as their starter. He had a great game 1 against Bucknell. He actually had a 110 apex, which is good against a really good UVA defense, and he threw the game-winning touchdown with under a minute left. Last week I mentioned that SDSU is bad. They had a negative apex so far on the season. They barely beat Idaho State, and they obliged me by just getting crushed by UCLA. I mentioned that I was impressed in week one by Charlotte's defense, the big improvement. And you mentioned that they actually held a pretty good Maryland offense. They held them in check for about a half plus. And the Moon God did not play against Miami of Ohio. Get well soon, Moon God. Um, New observations. Arkansas against, and I don't know if you remember, Kent State is just like a ground zero. There's nothing left on their roster from last season. Arkansas only had a total of 308 yards on 64 plays, less than 5 per play against Kent State. That's a real problem, notwithstanding the Arkansas fan that told me that I was wrong and he wished my mother had miscarried and all kinds of fun stuff. Shout out to that guy. But I'm sorry, that's a problem. That's really a problem. You should be getting 5 yards, just falling over for 5 yards a game against a play against Kent State. Missouri rushed for less than 3 yards per attempt against Middle Tennessee. Not impressive. Jamari Thrash, I was excited about him moving up from Georgia State to Louisville. He's been their leading receiver in both games this season, so seems to be making the transition to Power 5 well. Haynes King, who we crapped on a lot last season. Look at this. Apex of 152 and 182 in his first 2 games.
He was not the
Guess who's
problem.
no, yeah. Guess who is a problem? That would be Phil Dracovic at Pitt, and I don't think it's him as much as that awesome offensive coordinator who kind of killed Keaton Slovis for a season last year too. Look at those numbers. Maybe Cincinnati's defense is okay. I can't imagine that Luke Fickell leaving makes that defense better. Those are horrible numbers. And remember, it took Satterfield a while to get the Louisville defense fixed when he was there. It took him like 3 seasons, basically. Revisiting that horrible Boston College loss to Northern Illinois. Well, Northern Illinois went on to lose to Southern Illinois, and BC beat Holy Cross at home only by 3, and actually Holy Cross had a chance to win the game late and just fumbled. I was interested about Old Dominion. They brought in the offensive coordinator from Fordham, and they won. They beat Louisiana, these Louisiana kids, the Cajuns. They had 7.3 yards per play, which is a great start for conference play, considering that, I don't know if you remember, like they even brought Fordham's backup as their starter. This is promising. I actually had them as one of my flyers for season win total overs. Sunbelt's interesting. ODU might actually, I'd be surprised if they don't beat last year's record. Jacksonville State, this is interesting. They basically played coastal to a draw. They had 5.4 yards on offense, and they gave up the same on defense. It should be closer than a 14-point loss. They basically lost the fumble battle. If it's interceptions, it's one thing, but it's basically they had bad. I think they were -3 in fumbles lost. So this dirties up their form. I think that they're better than what the numbers are going to say, and when my metrics will probably prove that out, that they are better than what we're seeing in the total scores. A couple things here I'm not sure to make of, and I want your opinion on this. Mississippi State scored only 24 points in regulation against Arizona. Arizona's defense was horrible. They still have the same horrible players. They didn't project to improve much. The defensive coordinator is not good, to be generous. Is this more of a moment of concern about the Mississippi State offense and the revamp there, or do we think that Arizona might actually have turned a corner on defense?
I think it's a bit of both. I think apparently Mississippi State is running the ball a lot more, so Will Rogers has been putting up a lot less impressive numbers than last year. But at the same time, Arizona has improved too, right? I had Arizona in the game plus 9.5, and the money line didn't cash, but the 9.5 did, so I was happy with that. But yeah, it was very like it was not particularly overwhelming performance by a very underwhelming performance by Mississippi State there. I think this is it's a bit of a rebuilding year for them. I think.
Yeah, yeah. I need to be convinced on. I need more, I guess, because on Arizona's defense, I can't believe it based on this and going against the new offense. The other one, so FIU's new quarterback Keon Jenkins, really nice numbers against North Texas. Maybe this guy is good, even though he couldn't beat out Grayson James? Question mark.
Well, why
Or is this
was
just North Texas? North Texas gave up 50 to Cal. So I don't. Is just this North
well,
Texas really, really, really
Cal,
bad?
Cal looked okay against Auburn. They did cover the spread against
Auburn.
Auburn,
Well,
so that's something.
they scored 10 points.
Now, Auburn
They
only
scored
scored
50
14.
against North Texas.
That is true.
I'm not
I don't
worried
know.
about Cal's. Yeah, Cal's offense
Yeah,
scored 50 against North Texas, and this guy who couldn't beat out Jake Grayson James, he basically has like Cam Newton numbers here.
I kind of think it's weird when
Is
you
he good?
he's probably better than Grayson James.
Okay, so are both the guys on this podcast, but go on. Um,
I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, whenever there's like some camp battle where like someone starts and then they're horrible and then the backup comes in, I always like, but then why did this person win camp? And I feel like there's a lot, like with especially with coaches and players who have been there a while. I feel like there's like an incumbency advantage where if it's close, they'll go with the veteran and they'll be like, oh, okay, we'll give it to you, and then maybe like, and I think we're kind of seeing that with Ohio State too, where they're being kind of weird with why they're not starting anybody else that's new. Um, so I it's a very weird. I have no idea why. Like, if this guy was not, and he actually did pretty well. Like they were 12-point underdogs. They won outright against North Texas. I have
mhm.
no idea why he wasn't starting. Now maybe there was some sort of weird loyalty to the other guy, but he should be the starter now going forward. I mean, the other guy got
Yeah,
benched against Maine, so he's the starter going forward. So we're going to find out. But I'm interested to see what Florida International can do.
yeah. I don't know. I again question marks, but man, North Texas might have a really, really, really bad defense. Like juicy to bet against. So, hey, guess what? That's it for part one.
Yeah, we will see you back here for part two, where we're going to talk about the upcoming games. Or we're going to talk about metrics first, and then the upcoming games for this week and what our models have for them.